This conference will now be recorded.
So let's make sure, can everybody see my screen, which has the agenda for today up? Good deal. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to minimize our webcam.
McCune's up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's unbelievable.
He stayed up all
Can't hear me.
There we go. All right. Why don't we go around the room here and just announce who's in the room? I know this owl is maybe slightly creepy as it is to me. You probably can't pick up who all is in the room, and then I'll go one by one on who's online. I'll start. Christina Murphy, General Manager, West Des Moines Waterworks.
Roy Salmon, Senior, Rural Water District.
Courtney Clark, Milwaukee.
Carol Freeman, Warren Water District.
Jody Smith, West Des Moines Waterworks.
Andy Fish, Warren Water District.
Diane Munns, Des Moines Waterworks.
Amy Kaler, Des Moines Waterworks.
Ted Corrigan, Des Moines Waterworks.
Sue Hufford, Des Moines Waterworks. Caitlin Caldwell, Des Moines Waterworks.
All right. Brad.
Brad Dietz, City of Waukee.
And Chelsea.
Chelsea Huseman, City Manager, City of Polk City.
Dale Atchison.
Dale Atchison, Urbandale Water Utility.
David Jones.
David Jones, City of Ankeny.
Jake Anderson.
Jake Anderson, City of Grimes.
Jamie.
Can you hear me? Yes, Jamie Bilt, West Des Moines Waterworks Communications.
Jeff Walters.
Jeff Walters, Polk City, City Council.
John Edwards.
John Edwards, Clive Mayor.
John McCune.
John McEwen, Urbandale Water Utility.
Matt McQuillan.
Matt McQuillan, Clive City Manager.
Mayor Phillips. We're not hearing you, Mayor Phillips, but we see you there. Neil Weiss.
Weiser.
All right, I think there's a little chopped up, but that's Neil from Urbandale. Dan Levitt. Scott Cercina.
Good morning, Scott Cercina, West Des Moines resident.
Dan Rippinger. All right, we didn't hear from you, Stan. Tom Cope.
Tom Cope, City of Johnson, City Council.
Morning, Tom. Okay, anybody I didn't catch in that?
This is Mike Weaver with the City of Johnston.
Mike Cody Weaver. Welcome, Mike. Anyone else?
This is Dan Lovett.
George Meineke. Oh, go ahead.
This is Dan Lovett from Xenia. I'm here.
And I heard one more.
Yes, George Meineke, City of Norwalk Council.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. This is Tom Phillips.
Welcome, Mayor. All right. We will move to the next agenda item, which is just a review of the minutes that were sent from the February 23rd, 24 meeting. I think I noted in the email, we're gonna, the board, once it's finally seated, will receive and file officially all the planning session minutes, but I just want to see if there are any corrections or changes that anyone would like ahead of that.
Gina, I just noticed in the minutes that Jody was missing from our subcommittee list.
Oh, Very good. For the executive director.
You're right, the last page.
Okay. My apologies, we'll get that fixed. Any other corrections? Okay. We'll move on here. So, I think I had a request in the chat to make someone a presenter. I think if I do that, then I can't change screens. So I'm not sure that we'll be able to do that. We'll move towards Amy, the status of the 28EF filing. And I know Royce is here. He also can maybe provide an update. So between the two of you.
I'll start and then I'll quickly turn it over to you, Royce. We have not yet filed the 28E, 28F pending final signature from USDA for doing the signature page. And now I'll kick it to you, Royce, maybe to give an update. I know you've been having discussions with attorneys and USDA, and if you could just provide an update on maybe timing.
Met with Allers Cooney about a week ago where they requested multiple documents, certified information, not just emails. And that was put together and reviewed yesterday with, Monday with signatures, and then it was sent to USDA yesterday. They told us in person that it would take 2 days to review the material and that they would get back to us at that point with either approval or not. We expect approval.
Okay. Great.
So once we get that, I'll work with legal counsel to file.
Sounds good. And, we still are on track. It sounds like right now at this point to have that first board meeting on April 24th. So I think that's still our plan. So any other questions from the group on the status of the 28EF filing? Okay. Update on board appointments and committee representatives. I think I've sent out a list of the board members and the alternates for all the cities. But if you recall from our last meeting, we discussed a request to try and move forward with appointing whoever you're going to appoint to the technical committee and the long range planning committee. And I know we have gotten some of those, so I will share that with what we have and where we're missing. This is for the technical committee.
I think we're missing just alternates for the technical committee.
Here we go.
Kind of scroll through there.
So it looks like we have a number of, like I said, primary for the technical committee, but we're missing a few on the alternate. And so we haven't really received probably many on the long range planning committee. That committee has not been obviously active yet, unlike the technical committee. I would say we'd like to see both, but certainly a priority on the technical committee because that committee is existing and meeting on a regular basis. And we'd like to receive and file those technical committee appointees or representatives at the first board meeting. So if you see a gap there on your alternate, please, for your entity, please make note of that and try and tackle that in the next couple of weeks.
Christina, Jerry Freestone is going to be our appointed alternate on the technical committee. And we were kind of treating our technical committee reps as our long range planning committee reps as well, because they would be the same. So, but if we need to make that official, we can do that, I guess.
I suspect that will be very common, Matt. So I think that's Matt. I think I'm hearing your voice right.
Yes.
I can only have so many screens up, so I don't see who's talking necessarily. Yes, so I do think that will be common. It's not a requirement that they be the same, and we haven't really started that long-range planning committee, and I suspect there's a few duties that are being done at the technical committee level that will transition over to that committee in the future, so. Okay, any other updates from anyone, or? I know there's been a lot of work being done at the technical committee, so appreciate everybody's participation in that so far, just to keep planning going here. All right. So next on the list is just a confirmation for everybody that the initial board meeting is planned for April 24th at 3 p.m. I had a little scheduling snafu when I went back to schedule the MPO. They were booked. The Council of Governments had moved their meeting into that slot. And so as a one-time change for them. And so our future meetings, there's not an issue with hosts for the MPO hosting, but for this first board meeting, we kind of looked at a couple of options, and I think there was a lot of discussion about easily accessing the location given the particular time of the day. And so we can, here in West Des Moines, use the Recplex free of charge. So, and they have assured me we're going to do a trial run, that they're completely set up to handle a hybrid meeting. And so we will plan on that at 3 p.m. We're going to talk a little later about the communications plan. Talk about, we're going to try and do something ahead of that meeting to commemorate the first board meeting. So we'll talk about that a little later.
Christina, just for anyone that wasn't on this is Sue Hubbard. For anyone that wasn't on the last meeting, Jody and Diane and I have been meeting just to kind of work through more organizational type of things. How can we make this a smooth meeting when we first all get together? We brought that up at the last meeting and no one seemed to have an issue with that, but I just wanted to be very clear that we did have another meeting. And in that we were discussing the agenda for the first meeting, which all of you have a copy of it here with what's been prepared. We will need someone to call that meeting to order. Prior to the roll call, public comment, and then we'll go into electing the board chair, vice chair, et cetera. The board chair would take over from the person who calls it to order, but I just wanted to put that out there that we will need someone to kick off that meeting. And I don't know if we want to talk about that now, just so it's clear. But I didn't want that to come as a surprise to anyone when they walk in and somebody calls the meeting to order. That decision hasn't been made yet.
Thanks, Sue. And we can move on to this next agenda item, because that's one thing I think that we are going to have to decide is who's going to call the meeting to order. And then you'll notice that Ted and I have been working on the agenda. We rearranged some things a little bit to try and help the board meeting go along a little smoother and maybe try and add some items to the consent agenda, just to make that a number of items that could go consent unless they're pulled happen a little faster. So let's first start about the pro tem, someone to call the meeting to order before a chair is selected. Any comments or suggestions from anybody in the group on who could do that?
I think it needs, this is Diane Munns, I think it needs to be somebody who, one of the trustees, the board trustees, and we checked with legal counsel and they gave us a little script. So I think we just take a volunteer. Somebody willing to do that?
Or nomination.
Yeah.
Nominate Mayor Courtney for one seat.
Yeah.
why you don't show up to the meeting.
Don't show up. But I do think that at the meeting, we just nominate someone, and if they say, yeah, I'll do it, everybody agrees, and they can just open.
Yep.
All right.
I think it's always nice to know if you're gonna be. Someone might be volunteering.
It's closer than downtown. I would be fine to do that. Yeah, I'm planning to be there in person.
Great. Sounds great. Any questions or comments from the crew online?
Not with regard to that item, but with regard to the meeting place, is now an appropriate, I mean, that's certainly much more convenient for those of us coming from down south than anything downtown. That's something that we could consider for future going forward.
Yeah, actually, I had a similar thought. I think we just want to see how it goes, and I think if all we were trying to do is set up a plan and a tentative plan, and that certainly is something the board could discuss after that first meeting if everything goes according to the way you want that setting to be like, and make a decision on if that's something that you want to continue in the future. My conversation with Shane Ratcliffe, who's the Reflex manager, is they're happy to host if they're asked to. So now I have not tried to look at the schedule there. We only talked about the first meeting, so I don't think their meeting rooms are used, but probably not as much as obviously the other space there. But there is plenty of parking available, and it is right off the interstate. So. Which is why I chose that backup location. I thought it might be a little easier for some. Okay, so working further down the agenda, what we tried to do, this agenda is lengthy and a lot to do on it. So what we tried to do is move up what we, if you recall from our discussion, we'll call them priority action items, things we want to make sure the board is focused on addressing at the first board meeting. And then we have a consent agenda that we tried to put things that we thought would be of little controversy or discussion necessary to try and speed, again, the agenda along a little further if there's any objections there. And then the third section there, the potential action items, we just decided that we tried to determine items that would be great if we could tackle in our first meeting, but if for some reason we were running long, they could be tabled for a second meeting. So you'll notice a couple are crossed out down below there. A couple of them could be a little bit more, but the finance committee, I think that one is probably one, I'm not sure, we weren't sure if it was necessary to happen on the very first board meeting, just because we didn't envision maybe the finance committee convening between the first and second board meetings. And that was the same for interim engineering services and the reserve requirements. Now, we do want to address the reserve requirements, but I'm not sure that it's necessary to happen in the very first board meeting. So I think we'd like to hear input on a couple of those items. And then you'll notice we've added the communications plan as well. It's something that has come up in discussions that we should have an interim communications plan for CIWW, particularly with handling the media and development of the landing page. So we did consult with legal counsel about format, and Ted and I have been working on, we created a template for the board action form and have been starting to populate that with these items so that we're ready for the 24th. So I'll open it up for any discussion on the draft agenda, any additional discussion on the draft agenda.
Hey, this is Diane Munns. I have a question. You said if we're running long. what is the expectation of the group on about how long this meeting is going to be? Till we're all tired.
Well, I think a couple of hours, I guess, is what 2 hours is what I probably had in mind, what we're trying to fit content, I guess, to. I guess, I don't know if that runs with people's expectations, but if we're trying to keep to an hour, then we definitely need to focus in on what needs to absolutely happen. Would you?
3 to 5 makes sense. I think you're gonna lose focus and attention.
Yeah.
Especially in a hybrid meeting, if you're going longer.
And we are asking, you'll see later, we're asking everybody to show up at 2:30 for a press sort of commemorative related event. So now we're going on 2.5 hours.
My second question is, you talked about the template that we will get ahead of time and populating that. I assume that will be all of the materials and any background information. So an associated question is, how soon will we get that before the meeting?
Well, that's a good discussion. I think, I'll see if don't know if I can pull it up. See how well this goes.
Meeting's a Wednesday, right?
So,
I think we're talking about trying to have everything done by Friday,
yes.
so that we could deliver packet virtually, electronically to everyone on Friday.
So I'll give you a little taste. Hope we can still see my screen of what this is starting to look like. This, imagine, to tackle every agenda item is going to take a little work on staff's part. It's thinking. Sorry, I locked up the whole system. Okay, so let me make sure. Okay, just sharing online. This is just a excerpt of what this format looks like. We don't know what the logo is going to be, just the format, summary, impact, and then the recommended action. So we're working off that template. That can change in the future. Just we had to start somewhere or something. I think our anticipation, like I said, is to get that out to the board by Friday before the board meeting. So Ted didn't tell everybody he's coming back that day from a vacation, but 10-day vacation. So
Timing is everything, right?
Yeah. And one of the things, that we're trying to do, and something that we're going to consider in the future, we've selected this between West Des Moines Waterworks and Des Moines Waterworks right now, that we have our board meeting. So my board packet prep is next week, and then the week that we're trying to get this all out is also Des Moines Waterworks' own trustee meeting, board packet prep week. And so that takes a lot of concerted effort to make sure that we get that strategized and try and get as much done early. Of course, we're hoping in the future, we know that we'll still be preparing some of these items, but some of these will become the executive director duties. So, so that's everybody, that's the format you can expect and the supporting materials. And right now we're kind of using a shared drive to coordinate that. So, so Friday before, is that acceptable to everybody? I would tell my board Friday before, but I've occasionally gone out Monday in a pinch, but we really try hard to get them out the Friday before a meeting, so. And that is our goal at this point.
And those will be posted on,
So
everyone should post those, or?
So the agenda right now, that's something for discussion in the communications plan. So the agenda for these planning sessions have been posted at West Des Moines Waterworks and Des Moines Waterworks. They're posted on a website currently hosted by Des Moines Waterworks, and that's where the minutes and the recording have gone. And that will be the tentative that'll be the plan for the first board meeting until we establish the new website or a new landing page for CIWW, and then that website will then become the host.
I do think it would be a good discussion to talk about where we post the agendas and the meeting notice, because the two of us posting them, I think is an absolute minimum. I think it'd be good if all the member agencies would, be posted on your door, just so there's complete transparency for your customers. I think that would be a good practice, at least until we define where our meeting place is going to be, because the notices are required to be posted at the primary location of the entity, which CIWW does not have a primary location, and at the normal meeting place, which is either going to be MPO or Recplex. So I would say, I would encourage everyone to post in the door, every member agency.
Yeah, and the Recplex is, I suspect, not probably typically used to posting, so we'll address that. Maybe they have other regular meetings there that they have to post for, I don't know, I've never actually seen that. But certainly MPO is probably used to posting, but I agree, I guess discussion about where to post from this group.
Do we need to post on individual websites as well? Because I don't know how many customers actually walk in the door anymore at any of our locations to even see those agendas.
So I think it would be good if there's a place to maybe link towards where it's landing right now on the Des Moines Waterworks page. And then once CIWW has a landing page, I think it would be good somewhere in your website where you normally have agendas or something to that effect that you post landing to the CIWW website. So.
Well, this is common. We've got WRA, Metro Waste, MPO, DART, that all have that. And I don't think that all the entities post members or the agendas for all of those meetings. But I do think it's advisable, as Ted said, at least the initial one or two or three until you get your own page set up and your own location that's predetermined. So
I think that's would be good practice initially. And then
I think the legal requirement goes to the entity holding the meeting. So once we get into a rhythm and have some of these initial things worked out. But until then, people can do it.
yeah, erring on the side of communication, I think is good here initially, and then we'll be able to refine that as we get into it.
well, you have Jody Smith again for those online. You have on the agenda the application for the URL. And so shortly after that's granted, perhaps we could get a skeleton of the web page put up to the agenda and the minutes, et cetera, can be posted.
Yep, and actually, we've already had the communication team working on getting quotes for doing so, and that will be part of the communication.
I did have one other question. I think maybe a suggestion on the first page. You have a approval of an interim financial services. And when I first read that, I wasn't sure if that meant interim financial advisory services or administrative support. You've got administrative support on the potential action items. So if this part on item J is for interim financial advisory services, you might want to put that word in there.
So
is that what you're intending?
it's probably both, and we might need to split that. So there's financial advisory services, things like PFM, and then we need to have someone who's going to invoice for the startup funds too, which is not a PFM. So we haven't, there's been discussion, we haven't really established who that's going to be yet. We've had some conversations about who could it possibly be, but haven't finished that. So I see that as probably two separate financial services it might be a J1 and J2. One is the financial advisory services and then more all accounting related services.
Or the back when you've got administrative support, it could be financial support or something like that too.
Yep, we could put it there. I think I was looking at administrative support as more administrative assistant.
Right.
That type of clerking assistance. But and packet prep. Okay, we can find a place that makes sense. I do think I would consider that more a priority item because as soon as we have accounts and tax ID, we need to send the invoices for the startup funds because they are due 60. I think so. I always question myself. I think it's 60. 60 days, the startup funds, the 2 million total, so. So we'll make an adjustment, either putting a J1 and 2, separating that, or move administrative support. Does that work?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any heartburn about punting on a couple items to the second meeting that maybe aren't as big a priority? No.
Christina, when you get our subcommittees update, I'll just give you a preview. We don't think we'll be ready with the interim executive director by this meeting. And just in terms of the reality of what we're seeing out there in the market in terms of available folks. But I'll share more detail on that in our subcommittees report in a minute, but we feel that one's going to likely push.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on the agenda? We'll keep moving forward here.
One question then.
Yes.
And maybe this is later, but would A then cover an interim?
Yes, so we probably will put something related to the interim executive director. The interim was up at the top on the priority action items. So we'll decide how we want to handle that. If we need to table the motion or change it to discussion, possible. And then the one on 7A is really who starting the formal process. Okay. Any other questions on the draft agenda? And, if you think of something later, please reach out to Ted or I and send it our way. So it's a working document, so it will be probably for at least another couple weeks here, so. But know that we're working on it and pulling all the supporting information together. Okay, we'll move on to the small group update on the interim executive director and job description. I think that's Jody, Matt McClellan, David Jones, and Andy Fish. I'll let one of you guys give an update.
Yeah, I'll be speaking for the subcommittee, Christina. So we've been over the last number of weeks and evaluating what would be the right fit for an interim executive director role, with a lot of logistics-oriented tasks being first priorities. A lot of the things you just described in terms of what's on the agenda, in terms of setting up financial accounts, logistics for board meetings, and other consultant type services. As we were discussing it, we leaned more towards looking at retired city managers or retired folks in the utility kind of general management space, knowing that those skill sets would fit a little bit more with those tasks. We really saw kind of by the 6 to 9 month period for the interim executive director role. And I'll talk about that in a minute in terms of the committee's unanimous recommendation related to the permanent executive director process. But for the interim executive director, we reached out to a number of retired city managers, mainly from the metro area and other parts of the state that we were familiar with. We've unfortunately struck out with all of those individuals. A number of them have consultancies and been doing consultant work after their retirements. None have the bandwidth or the desire to serve this role. We have been shaping the demands of this role to about 10 to 20 hours a week on average, knowing that there'll be more peaks prior to board meetings and during board meeting weeks, and maybe some more valleys of time other times of the month in this first 6 to 9 month period. We've also been operating under the preface that the interim executive director would not be somebody who would be considered for the permanent executive director role per the discussion at previous meetings. And so hence why we were going with looking at some of these recently retired folks. I know some of the members were still reaching out to some of the utility folks that have recently retired that are in the water utility space to gauge some interest. We haven't been able to fully contact them yet, but that's some work that we want to continue to do. We have had a meeting with one individual. His name is Bill Smith. He is interested potentially in the opportunity. He is a consultant now. He was formerly an executive director of, I'll make sure I get his title right. He was the executive director for the organization of MESO states. So this is an electric utility space. And he has some experience in startup of a new organization because he was the first executive director of that group, overseeing electric utility markets, formerly an attorney for the Iowa Utilities Board. So the subcommittee had met with him yesterday, had a good conversation, kind of outlined the scope of the duties. The subcommittee is now encouraging Bill to meet with the 3 general managers of the water utility, operating utilities, to kind of dig a little deeper and get their feedback on Bill. So we do have a possibility. It's really only one option at the moment. We have a few others that we want to vet. That's why I think the subcommittee feels that I don't know if we'll be ready in 3 weeks, to be honest, with a recommendation on an interim executive director. One thing we do like about Bill is he does have a consultancy already set up. So our thought is that would be the preference of basically having in a consultant, basically professional services agreement for the initial executive director rather than being an employee per se. So we do like that piece of what Bill has to offer, and I think he checks a lot of the boxes of what we would want to see for an interim executive director position. There was some questions about support. I think he would definitely need some basic administrative support, and so we have a little outside of the purview of the subcommittee, but of course you get into these conversations when you're talking about interim executive director is where do we need to have an office for this person? So being a little proactive, I reached out to the MPO, wondering if they had at least some vacant office space that could be used on a temporary basis. It would be something that would have to be kind of a lease agreement with the MPO. They have been we're a little bit sensitive to some things with the MPO in terms of them peeling back their administrative support for other permanent entities. As my conversation and then David's conversation with the board chair of the MPO, we very much view this on a temporary basis. We also know that the MPO offices were viewed as a likely location for the board meetings. I think the MPO is receptive to the temporary office space. I think one thing that we'd like to talk with them a little bit further is on a temporary basis, maybe some minor administrative support. But I know you just talked a little bit about an interim board clerk for the next agenda, so that may, serve some of that purpose. But as I talked with Dylan at the MPO, the executive director at the MPO, basic access to printer, some of the office, equipment functions, I don't think they have much concern with. What will need to occur for that temporary office space use is the MPO members on this, within this entity would need to make that request to the MPO officially. And so depending on the board, this group's reaction to that, I think David and myself would be happy to coordinate that to make kind of the official request to the MPO board for that temporary office space, and develop a rough lease agreement that may or may not be ready for that first board meeting at the end of April, but definitely by the May meeting, as we kind of sort through the executive director, the interim executive director position. We know that for the most part, that'll likely be a mobile virtual type position for the most part. I think we were just wondering if we had a need to provide some temporary office space on an interim basis. So that's where we're at. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on the interim piece that Jody, Andy, or David that I missed that we discussed yesterday.
This is Diane Munz. I have a quick question for the group. I know you talked about retired or recently retired people to take over this role. Did you talk at all about having a consulting firm just do this for us?
We did talk about that briefly. We struggled with who would be the right fit for that. And so again, we welcome feedback from the group on if there is a desire to pursue that further. We weren't really feeling that was the right fit. But again, if we struggle with potential candidates, that might be our only course of action. We were struggling with what kind of consultant groups. We didn't think an engineering firm would be the right fit for that, because most of the tasks are logistics oriented, board operation, starting up an entity. So maybe other types of consultant firms might be a better fit, but we didn't go down that path very far. We were pursuing these other paths, and really have only been able to really make contact with folks these last couple of weeks. So, and unfortunately have struck out with a number of them. So, but we're open to other thoughts from the group on that.
Thanks, Matt. I think that we'll just open it up for further discussion if there is any.
While you're chewing on that for feedback, I'll then hit on real quickly. We have talked a little bit about this question of the permanent executive director role and the process there. I think as a subcommittee, we unanimously agree and recommend that a recruiting firm should be retained for that process. With it being a brand new entity and the number of entities involved and a new board being set, and also kind of going into a space of a position that we're really not familiar with in this metro area of a kind of overseeing a regional water utility, production utility. We think that there's going to be some professionals out there that'll better support that effort and making sure we're in the right ballpark in terms of compensation and type of position and job description. And so that's the recommendation from the subcommittee. What we thought of as next steps there, and welcome feedback from the utility folks on this call, is, and I have a contact with a family member who's in this kind of regional water space outside of the metro area, is really starting to identify what recruiting consultants are out there that specialize maybe in this space, and starting maybe to put that list together for the benefit of the board in terms of how the board will decide on how they would want to manage that process if the board agrees with our recommendation, whether that's executive committee or a subset of the board that manages the permanent executive director selection process. So that's something that we saw as a task that we could start to take on. We have some very preliminary, we kind of have an outline of an interim executive director job description that focuses on some of those logistical tasks. We haven't delved into kind of that full job description of the permanent executive director role. We know the 2080 informs a lot of that already anyway, and we have other examples to glean from, but that's the kind of the status of the work of the subcommittee at this point. I don't know if any of my other colleagues have anything that I may have missed from our conversations, but I think that covered everything.
I think we can, from the utility management team, kind of pull together some consultants that do this type of work and get those names to you. So names to the subcommittee, like recruiting firms that we see. So
Great work. Thank you for the thorough update to all of you.
Is there a comfort level, this is again, Jody, with the small group asking the MPO on a formal basis about office space on an interim basis?
The only thing about that, Jody, I really want to be sensitive to our suburban customers and the comment that was made about, being downtown. Now, if having that temporary office space at the MPO does not tie us to the board meetings being there,
no,
then I think, that's fine. I know there's kind of some political stuff going on with the MPO, and do we want to avoid that there's no shortage of office space in this community. Let's admit it right now. There's tons of space. So is that, I'm not close enough to know, is that something we want to avoid? I'll just touch the elephant in the room and say, do we want to avoid it, or is it okay?
I defer to David Jones. He's mayor. He's the current chair of the MPO, and so David has better thoughts as to the appropriateness of the timing. So
I think I would also just add, and David should absolutely opine, but most of the political stuff at the MPO is through having the appointment of the director there, and I think it's been worked through, in terms of how they want to go about making decisions that don't touch transportation. So at least there's a framework now, which was part of what caused some of the concern last year. I think leased office space is something that's an easier decision. Any kind of support would be a much more challenging discussion with them. And maybe David has a different take on that, but that's sort of where it got into trouble last year. I would also just ask the subcommittee too, can you clarify a little bit more about why exactly office space is needed? If we're looking at somebody that already has a consultancy or hiring a consulting firm, why do we need Central Iowa Water Works temporary office space? If you could just clarify that.
That's a fair question. We were thinking about it as an option in case there was a desire of whoever we were able to retain for the interim executive director role to have it as an option. If it's not needed, would love to not have to go there at all until a more permanent space could be determined, and that could be one of the tasks of the interim executive director. We knew that there would have to be some kind of, we were wondering whether or not there needed to be some kind of mailing address developed for the entity in the short term that the MPO could serve as, and to have some kind of physical location. So I think that was part of it too. But I think ideally we would love to not have to do it if it's not necessary in these first 5 to 6 months. But we weren't sure, we didn't have a guarantee on who we'd be working with. So we wanted to at least broach the discussion. And I think I would agree with you, Mayor Clark, that I think the office space is a pretty easy sell, and David can chime in as well, because I know he's talked to Mark about it, Mayor Holm about it. And I think the administrative support is a little bit of a trickier lift. And so ideally hopefully wouldn't have to go there at all, but we also know, again, we don't know exactly who we're dealing with yet on the interim executive director. I think if the current individual that we're having discussions with, there would need to be some administrative support for that individual to meet the board's expectations, would be my opinion on that. And I think the subcommittee's opinion, but I don't want to speak for them. So that was something that we were trying to wrestle with a little bit as of even yesterday afternoon. So, but hopefully that provides a little bit of background of why we were taking a look at temporary office space.
Does it make sense that maybe having that temporary space would be more useful, or one, having it as an option? I fully understand that we'd want to at least know if it was an option. But is it likely that we would need that for whatever we do on the administrative support front? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That could potentially be the case. Again, I think we were operating with kind of some unknowns of not knowing, what additional interim staff support would be needed beyond the executive director. We've been focused on just that interim executive director role, but we're finding whether, again, it's an interim board clerk, and if that comes from one of the member entities to provide some initial support to at least get agendas out the door, with the executive director helping shape that agenda, interim executive director helping shape that agenda. We weren't quite sure what that all would look like and what the board's expectations were. So, so that could be a potential as well, is that office space could serve as a landing spot if there was additional administrative support beyond an interim executive director that was in a consultant environment that was working remotely.
Would it be appropriate to get those questions answered first, like figure out what path we're taking, and then, because it certainly sounds like, we may need office space, but then maybe we don't. So maybe we get those and go through the April 24th meeting first, answer some of these questions, and then decide. Yeah, I think it kind of depends on who is selected as interim, because I know the board had asked Ted and I about our level of admin support, and certainly we have admins here. And to date, we haven't probably engaged our admin staff on a number of these items, but putting a whole board packet together obviously involves administrative support for each of our entities. And I think we're trying to determine what capacity we have at each of our individual utilities beyond our own board packets that line up in that space. And that is going to be challenging, I think, to have that kind of capacity. And it could be competing sort of a bit needs during that time. So, but also it depends on the person that you hire and how comfortable they are with pulling those things together. And what level of admin support they need. So it is a little chicken and egg, I think, a little bit as to who you select for, interim executive director versus what their needs are going to be. So it's a little challenging. I understand why it's left out there, but we can work to try and continue to work with the committee about what options might be available. But I do think in the long term, CIWW is going to have some of its own administrative support, unless it comes from some other entity that has capacity available. I'm not sure that, at least for West Windmarks, and I'm guessing, Ted, you can speak for yourself, but what I've heard from you is that the timing of packet prep with our own board meetings could be challenging. So
that's one of the biggest challenges for us, is just that it's the same week. Our board meeting is literally the day before Central Iowa Water Works board meetings. So we'll literally be in board packet preparation, and all of our staff that will be busy at the same time that this packet needs to be put together. But that doesn't mean that we don't have some capacity to be of assistance, but it probably won't be that week.
Hey, Christina, this is Dale. I think I agree with Matt and what everybody's saying, and in hearing what Matt is saying, that the finding the right person is the most important part, and filling the spaces in around it. How we serve that person, I think, can be we can fill that. We can find that niche that'll work for that individual, and I think the key is to find the right person and then go from there.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of opportunities. I mean, I don't know. I would think that finding someone to do, 15 to 20 hours worth of work on a part-time basis, admin support, I think you could find pretty easily. I could see a lot of people may be interested in that opportunity. So.
I tend to agree. We can find a person and build around them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we're getting close on time, and I want to make sure we have a chance to hit on a couple other items. And so I propose we kind of move on here just so we can hit these other items and get an update before everybody has to maybe leave. And if you have other comments or questions, I think direct those, Matt McQuillan, and he can share that with the subcommittee that's been put together for the interim executive director.
So Christina, just a real quick summary for us is we're going to continue to work with this potential candidate. We've got a few others that we want to contact. We're going to have that meeting with the general managers of the 3 utilities with that potential candidate. And then we will continue, we'll hold off on the MPO piece for now. And then we'll continue to work on basically focusing on the interim executive director. If anybody has any thoughts on the consultant firm side of an interim executive director in terms of a firm, working with a firm, we'd welcome that feedback. But then we'll work on the path we're on right now, and then hopefully have a more substantial update by the board meeting. Hence why we have recommended that we don't think we'll have an approval for an appointment of an interim executive director by this April 24th meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I will adjust the agenda accordingly, Matt. We might just leave it as like a discussion update, so. Okay. So a small group update on the preliminary bylaws, and I apologize if it's more than Jody and Diane, that's all I had written down. Or if there was anybody else involved in that discussion, let me know. But Jody or Diane, you want to give an update on the preliminary bylaws?
They're being put together. Legal counsel has been working on them and getting a copy of them to look at. They did start with the WRA. They have been looking at those bylaws. And
that sounds good. Does anybody want to be part of that bylaws? I've got Jody and Diane. Am I missing somebody else?
Actually, it was I thought it was Diane and then the 2 councils.
Okay, sorry.
That's fine.
Jody and
I
Diane.
think maybe the other thing I need to do there is take a quick look at people's policy manuals and see if there's anything out of those that we need to be looking at that first meeting.
Okay.
We should adopt.
So do you need us to provide the policies or?
What's?
And the rest of the group?
And I mean, I don't think that we have to have a lot. I don't even know if we have to have anything at this first meeting, but if there are things that it might be good to get in.
Okay. So if you have existing board policies, please send those to Diane so that she can see the examples. Any questions from anybody else on bylaws? I know that the legal counsel is working on that, and by legal counsel I mean Amy Beattie, who is Western Wine Waterworks' legal counsel, and Rick Malm, who is Des Moines Waterworks.
They're working together on it.
So, okay, and then update on insurance for the board. Let me just give you a quick update. So I've been working with Holmes Murphy to get quotes It's my understanding, I thought I was gonna get a quote from ICAP, but ICAP does not do standalone D&O insurance, so they're not an option, at least at the beginning, until maybe that's rolled into other insurance policies. He did get 2 quotes. He said a number of insurance providers just by practice don't insure new entities, so that threw out several. But we did get quotes from Intact Specialty and RSUI. I think everybody can see on here. So Intact was the 1 million. Antitrust is not covered, and employment practices, no employment practices are included. RSUI, the antitrust claims are silent, which doesn't necessarily, if I'm speaking insurance, which I should not do, which basically says they don't outright say they don't cover it, but won't be determined until you actually file a claim. And then it does include the EPL. In my discussion with them, they thought 1 million was sufficient. They were not concerned necessarily about the antitrust claims, given, we're not transferring assets. The goal of this is just to cover through the end of the year, and then we're going to have to relook at things once assets transfer, because that starts a whole nother insurance discussion. And so their recommendation is that the Intact Specialty at the 1 million limit for $10,000 is sufficient for this board through the end of the year. So that is what I'm going to bring forward to the board for consideration, unless there is questions, concerns that I hopefully might be able to answer. And Jody, you probably know better than I do insurance. But anyways, that's where we're at.
The only thing that I'd offer is that it may be prudent to the ICAP, and again, I have way too much background there on the decades of service on the ICAP board, to have also general liability coverage in addition to the director's liability. And just wrap that all up, and it may not be that much more. Just to have that, because we're gonna need general liability anyway.
Well,
At some point in time. If
in the
not,
future, we're gonna have to relook at all the insurance related items at the operational commencement date. So this is just to cover through the end of the year, assuming that the operational commencement date is.
But my point is that you may be able to get a quote from ICAP that's comparable to the 10,600, and then have it include the general liability.
All right, I will ask about that.
So, don't know, but that's where I'd start. You're gonna need GL sooner rather than later. Whether it's April 24th or whether it's January 1st or 25, you're gonna need the GL.
Yeah, and we looked at whether, so only half a dozen entities use ICAP, and there's a number of other entities using other providers.
Yeah.
Because ICAP thought that our trustees were covered underneath the ICAP policies, but it wasn't explicit, but they thought that would be the general impression, but I'd have to go to every single insurance company to ask for clarification on whether your trustee was covered. We declined to do that. So I will circle back with ICAP to see if general liability insurance can be included. I think they, for the same price, our impression from Holmes Murphy is that, like I said, there's a whole nother conversation about insurance when the operational commencement date happens. Any questions or comments, or not wanting to proceed in that path? And it's okay for you guys to approve at the first board meeting you are covered, then it doesn't have to be procured in advance, it can be backdated. So that was acceptable. I did confirm that. I think I'll just sort out, I just need to sort out if maybe one of the 2 utilities has to pay for it and be reimbursed, just because I don't know how long it's gonna take to actually be able to pay a bill. And so we'll include that in the authorization if needed. So. Okay, and so next agenda item, and I know we're moving along, so some people may have to drop off here, is the communications plan. And so I will pull up, you guys haven't received this yet, but this discussion has kind of come up about, we've kind of talked about this on press inquiries and who's going to be responsible for media contacts? Is it going to be the interim executive director? Is it going to be somebody else? Who's going to be responsible for posting and distributing the agenda out? So just our media consultants, and I know Des Moines Arts has someone in-house, and Jamie is ours, have been putting together, this is just some discussions about what we're going to have to decide about how the agendas are going to be posted, and we talked about that a little bit here. But things like a logo, consistent messaging, which I know Urbandale Water Utility, Des Moines Works, and West Des Moines Works had engaged Wickstead for a period of time to help with some of the common messaging across our three entities when we were talking about CIWW. So we pulled some of that language from what we paid Wickstead, who is a consulting firm. Trying to continue to use some of those same elements. And then, as I mentioned, we're working on getting quotes. If we're going to launch CIWW.gov, then we need to pay someone to put a basic page up and framework for posting agendas and minutes and so on and so forth. So the other thing I wanted to mention, because it's coming up, is a desire. I think our media, our marketing consultants would say we've probably not done enough to talk about what a huge accomplishment CIWW is. And so, they would like to do a photo op news conference ahead of the first board meeting at, say, like 2:30. And in fact, they'd like to have someone kind of MC that. We don't know yet. I'm asking for feedback on possibly people that have been involved or other people that might be good to have kind of MC that, a press release for that first board meeting, and then a commemorative photo of all the trustees and alternates. I'm trying to move along quickly. I don't know. I closed it accidentally. So we've got a banner sort of going that has all the entities, and it says CIWW Stronger Together, to print that for the photo op. So there's something to kind of anchor that and do that event ahead of the first board meeting is something that we're working to pull together. If there's any interest by anybody on the call that wants to be part of this marketing communications plan discussion, please let me know. Otherwise, Melissa and Jamie have been kind of taking a lot of the work here.
And I do think when we talk to Melissa, she would like to have a name of all of your organization's communication persons so that they can share, anything that they're doing, and if you want to put it in your newsletter or whatever. So we do need that list sooner versus later. So they're involved if we're doing this press announcement.
And I think she has been in communication with some of your the people that she knows that do your media and outreach, just so that they can be coordinated on this.
But in some cases, it's going to be the utilities person, some cases the city, sometimes, community outreach. So we wanted to make sure everyone here knew that.
So any objection to a press sort of conference, sort of photo op ahead of the first board meeting? I know that means getting there even earlier, but I think there's been a tremendous amount of work and cooperation, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to celebrate all the work that's gone into it.
Can we talk about the MCs? Is that a decision we're going to make?
Well, it's a decision we definitely want feedback on. We're trying to find who the right person is in that situation, and I'm not sure we feel like we've landed necessarily on someone that, that we said, yes, that's absolutely the right person that should do this. So definitely would love some feedback, particularly in that area. Ideas, suggestions, feedback, absolutely.
Just to give a little bit of history, back to the beginning of when we started, Mayor Steve Gear was appointed by our group to lead the original effort.
Right.
So I want to make sure everyone knows that. I believe that is the reason that they probably put his name on.
Yep.
He has had a strong interest in the conversations I've had with him since then, of continuing to know what's going on. I mean, so that's the reason for him.
And you wrote there was an opinion piece.
Correct.
During the process.
Jay Byers, I mean, the partnership has had, I'd say, limited involvement in this. But Jay Byers was the CEO at the time that we needed a place to convene some of our early meetings, making that neutral. And Jay agreed to that. Tiffany really has not been involved. So I'm just.
Yeah, the reason for Tiffany is one, Jay's not there anymore, but Tiffany is the Des Moines Partnership, which I think all of us participate and support generally. So again, trying to find the right person is
A regional voice.
a regional voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. A regional neutral voice. How about that? So
Yeah.
I definitely, I know this is something Melissa and Jamie are like, looking for feedback on who's the right person here that the group feels supportive of, so.
I think any of those three would be recognizable, and as long as they could speak with a pretty strong voice about why this is great for the region, I don't have a preference, and maybe others do on the call, but.
Okay. Other feedback or suggestions for consideration?
We had the early conversation with the Des Moines Register Editorial Board 6 years ago. It was Mayor Lorenz, Mayor Andoy, Mayor County, and Mayor Gear. The only one that's still mayor is Bob Andoy. So,
Yep.
so
That would be another good choice.
How about EJ Giovanetti? He's been involved from the very beginning.
certainly.
Yeah. Still involved, still interested.
Aside from speaker, on the photo op thing, and news conference, I'm good with that. Do we think they're gonna stick around for the meeting? Because I don't really want them to.
Well, I asked Jamie about that and she thought that, they might for the first to see who's chair and just kind of for a few minutes, but didn't think that they probably would.
So it gets really boring.
Well, that's part of what, do we want to have that after the meeting, after the meeting at 4:30?
I think they were trying to hit the news site, that evening news site.
Okay.
That's what.
I was hoping they wouldn't come sit for a 2-hour meeting.
I don't
I don't think they would. But
Just, there's a lot of sausage making at the first meeting. Absolutely, that's a great press. All right.
Do we want to rank these? Just based on what everyone thinks?
Sure. I was trying to find the banner, sorry. I thought I found it. So things like that, just the banner, just options.
It's big, like.
It's big,
10 meters.
it's large,
Nice.
so working on that.
That's good.
Yeah, so, any other comments, suggestions from the group? Maybe I'll just go through.
Online ones especially. So.
Is that banner going to be, excuse me, is that banner going to be available for the photo shoot? What kind of
Yes,
background?
that's the plan.
Okay.
We haven't picked which one yet, but yes. And you guys don't worry about those details.
Okay.
I vote not the one with the exclamation.
Okay, got it. No exclamation point.
And I vote not that one with the cities behind it because it's kind of hard to see.
Okay.
I didn't see the exclamation point.
There's actually two with exclamation.
Okay.
You could take that out really easily. So any of them work. Okay.
This is Tom Cope. I've got somebody, I don't really like the exclamation point, but I couldn't hear the discussion if people do like it. To me, it sort of seems like almost like, hey, like as if we're struggling to stay together. And so we need to be together. So I'm not a fan of the exclamation point. So just.
That's okay. That's okay.
That was my point, Tom. That seemed a little kitschy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, good. Cool.
Now commenting on the banner, I don't think we should say CIWW. We've all been involved enough that we can shorten it, but I think it should be the good one spelled out.
And then we can move to the speakers.
No, you're
It's
absolutely fine.
complaining about.
This is sausage making it. So that's totally fine. So speakers, we do need to decide on that because it is not that far away and I want to make sure that we line that person up. So maybe I'll just go around the room, leaving out, we'll go around the room that are either trustee or alternate. How about that? Sue.
Okay, I wrote down for second, third choice.
Oh, okay. Let's just stick with first right now.
But I have three. I love the idea of a mayor, former or past. So I'm going to say Mayor Gear or Mayor Andrew.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I would say Mayor Gear or Jay. Jay is very.
No preference. Diane.
I'll say Mayor Gear.
Okay. Mayor Clark.
Yeah, I actually was gonna go with Mayor Andeweg or Jay. We're just gonna have to, I honestly though, am not from.
Okay. Got it.
Depend on who's in.
Yes. Well, fine. Yeah.
Go to
No preference. No preference. Okay, Jody.
One of the mayors.
Andy.
And I was impressed with Mayor Gear in the first initial meeting, so I don't really know the other ones.
And I don't have my list of who's in it. So, Brad, I think you're an alternate. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm an alternate. I'll follow suit with the mayor or Mayor Clark, but I would say either of the two mayors would be fine.
Okay. So we're going to those. David Jones.
I'm fine with any of the mayors that were mentioned.
Jake.
I don't care. This is trending in an appropriate direction.
Okay. Sean Edwards.
Yeah, either Bob or Steve. I guess I'd lean toward a current mayor for strategic reasons, but I'd welcome other input.
Okay. Mr. McCune.
I think either one of those would be fine, and if you could get them both, I think it'd even be better, so.
Nice.
Ooh, okay. Luke, are you an alternate? I can't remember.
I'm actually not the alternate. Our mayor just had to step out of the meeting, but I think we would be comfortable with just deferring for the rest of the group.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Matt?
I defer to Mayor Edwards and share his comments on fine with the mayors, but I would agree that a current mayor being up front would be ideal.
Okay. Neil?
Either Mayor or Christina. I don't have much history with either one of them, but fine with either one of them.
Okay. Dan?
I would actually support EJ Giovanetti because I know Mayor Gear was involved early on, but EJ has been the promoter of this since before it was even CIWW. So he would be a fit for me.
Tom Cope?
Yeah, I'm good with Mayor Anderwig would be my first priority, given he's the current mayor, and then either Steve Gear or EJ Giovanetti as the second choice.
Okay. And anybody else I missed that's on by phone? Okay. So it's pretty tied. So I think I kind of liked John's idea about maybe asking both if both are available. We'll start with Mayor Anweg and then talk to former Mayor Gear and see if maybe they're both available. I can both share some comments. Certainly want to make sure maybe we can extend an invitation to EJ to be to be there because he's not a board member or alternate, but certainly, as I've heard, been an important part of history. So, all right, is everybody okay with that plan?
Yes.
Very good.
Back to the banner.
So I am looking for anybody that wants to be part of the communications plan. So if you have a strong interest in being part of the communications planning team, just let me know. We can work out the details.
Currently it's small but mighty.
Yes.
Christina, I did want to mention that I think I know the Metro City or the communications folks kind of have a group, a Metro Communications group. So I don't have access to that email group, and either Pete DeCook, my assistant city manager, or any of the communication specialists, I think for any of the cities are a part of that. That might be a venue to, whenever the group develops communication materials or press releases that you want the cities to double click on and promote. That's a good group to tap into.
And who would have that list?
Well, maybe we'll talk to Janet Johnson.
Yeah.
I know Jamie knows her well.
Yeah, I think all the waterworks. I don't know if all the waterworks communications folks are a part of that group too, but
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, we're not.
That's exactly the kind of list we're looking for. Thank you.
But we have contacts with those people, so we'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And if you need to, again, Pete Cook, our assistant city manager, can get you in contact with them. So if you shoot him and I, or just me an email on it, or I can make a mention it to him, and then maybe send something to you, Christina.
Okay, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else related to the communications plan? I hear an unofficial volunteer, Diane, has got the banner. I will tell you, we really need to get the banner finished by the end of this week, so I've got time for it to be produced before the 24th. So we'll be asking for a short turnaround, and
I think we got good.
They're all
feedback
nice.
today.
yeah.
You can pick one.
No exclamation
No
point.
exclamation point.
I agree.
Okay.
Christina, did we touch on the interim legal counsel?
Oh, I skipped an item. I didn't. Thank you.
But I was gonna.
No, thanks. Let's circle back up to, good thing I'm not gonna be in charge. Discussion, sorry, let me circle back up to 8. I think that will be short. The interim legal counsel, I think this has been a discussion amongst Jody, Diane, Sue, and John. I just want to confirm, maybe share an update, and since we'll want to propose something at the board meeting amongst among that group wants to speak.
The micro mini group has talked through this, and since Rick Malm and Amy Beatty have both been involved with the crafting of the 2080, 28F, and know it inside out, and have represented the three utilities as we move this process forward. The four of us are suggesting that those two be named interim council at the first meeting to serve at least until the new executive director is hired and retained and has a chance to weigh in, and then the CIWW board can move forward with designating a permanent council.
I should probably note, I know Amy Beatty is West Des Moines Waterworks' council, but I also believe she is Ankeny and Polk City's council as well. So provides kind of a balanced perspective, a more balanced perspective for CIWW.
And just so people know, Rick was for years our legal counsel. He has gone into of counsel status, I think, sliding towards retirement, but he really does work very hard on the 2080 NAF and on this process, and we really like to see it through.
But currently, John Randy is our day in, day out legal counsel at Des Moines Waterworks.
My only question on that would be, if we have two, does that mean everything has to go through both, and does that result in double legal fees?
I don't think it always does. They work together. For instance, I think on the bylaws, Amy's taking the lead and Rick's been the assistant, and they alternate as to who what. So, and that's what I've experienced, and they don't bill us twice. So
I would suspect on routine items, it'll just be one of them, and if there's something controversial, maybe we'll ask them both to sort of weigh in. I will tell you that, I mean, I feel like what we're billed from Amy is very reasonable. So.
I think it's a good point to go back and confirm that with them.
I think we can give them that direction, like one will take the point, and then any items that maybe, again, we need to interpret the 2080 or whatever, that we ask them both to maybe weigh on.
Our thought too is we would save a significant amount of time because they are so involved.
Yeah, they know it already. You know, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, my apologies on missing that agenda item. Any other, I know we went long, 30 minutes long. If there's any other discussion, otherwise, I see a chat. Oh, David Jones. Yeah, sorry. Thanks. Thanks, David, for staying with us as long as you could. So any other discussion for the group? Otherwise, we'll adjourn.
Great.
All right. Thanks, everybody who was able to join us online.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you very much.
We will finish recording.
That would be great. Yes.
Board packet is our